Hi, I'm Greg Hunter. This is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, May 31st, 2013. My top story, the Middle East. Once again, it's inching towards war. In Syria, the Assad regime is wanting Russia to sell it these high-tech S-300 missiles. Russia wants to sell them to Assad. Why? Because it's gotten leaked out. There are a few reports that President Obama, the Obama administration, wants to have a no-fly zone over Syria to support the rebels. Now, these S-300 Soviet missiles, which Assad says he already has, the Russians say they're sending them. The U.S. says he doesn't have them just yet. Would make a no-fly zone very difficult. But this is what they're talking about, a no-fly zone in a country totally supported by Iran and Russia and to a little lesser extent, China. The Israelis say if the Russians sell the Syrians the S-300 missiles and make it hard for them to come back and bomb them again when they're getting ready to set up to send these 185-mile range missiles that Iran supposedly gave to Syria, they bombed them a few weeks ago and knocked them out. They say, hey, listen, if they get those missiles, we're going to attack. Syria says, if you attack again, we're going to attack you back. Can you get the idea here? This is getting ratcheted up in the Middle East. And on top of that, Senator John McCain, who's a big proponent of a no-fly zone over Syria and helping the rebels, slipped into Syria to meet with the Free Syrian Army, or Al-Qaeda. He even had his picture taken with some known Al-Qaeda operatives. Now, the U.S. says that, we need to arm the rebels. 70,000 Syrians have died so far in this more than 2-year-long civil war. But we need to arm the rebels, and we're going to vet them. We're going to vet the good, the Free Syrian Army, the good rebels, and make sure Al-Qaeda, which is a large part of the rebel force in Syria, doesn't get these rebels. Let's see, how would that work? You'd have the good rebels, the Free Syrian Army, and they'd get weapons, and then the guys fighting shoulder to shoulder to help you, remove an enemy from power, Assad. They need bullets or grenades or rocket launchers or mortars or surface-to-air missiles. What are you going to tell them? Here's a bag of rocks. You're Al-Qaeda. Help us get rid of Assad, but we can't get any weapons. If we sell Syria, give the Syrian rebels weapons, Al-Qaeda is going to end up getting those weapons. I just don't understand how Al-Qaeda in one country can be armed, and in another country we blow them up with drone attacks. I don't understand the foreign policy. I think it's dangerous, I think it's wrong-headed, and I think it's a mess. On the other side of the Middle East, there's a brand new State Department report out that says Iran is increasing its support for terrorism. Well, that makes sense. Hezbollah is helping out in Syria. Of course, they are a Shiite part, and Al-Qaeda is a Sunni sect, basically. It's Shia versus Sunni. Iran is supporting Hezbollah. They are a big recipient of their support. And so, now the State Department is saying, well, Iran is increasing its support. It probably is. But is that going to be yet another excuse to go to war in another part of the Middle East? Is that going to be an excuse to attack Iran? I don't know. We will see. But tensions are mounting all around the eastern edge in Iran and the western edge in Syria, all around the Middle East. Tensions are mounting. Embattled Attorney General Eric Holder has invited many mainstream media organizations for an off-the-record conversation. Part of that is going to be about security leaks, but I can't imagine that it wouldn't be about the IRS scandal, Benghazi, and of course the AP and the Fox News, thing where they, went after Fox News. They called one of the reporters a criminal co-conspirator. And we'll talk more about that in just a second. But, many of the mainstream media, including CBS, NBC, who's in the pocket of Obama, has them in their pocket, NBC, CBS, New York Times, said, no off-the-record conversation. As a reporter at ABC and CNN, I hated somebody saying, I'd like to have an off-the-record conversation. No. You know what that meant, off-the-record meant? I want to shape and spin and shape you and make sure that you get in line and get you to tell the story I want you to tell, but I want to do it off the record. And so a lot of these news organizations said, no way, the big ones. Some of them said yes. ABC News said, yeah, we'll listen to you. But most of them said, And boy, how refreshing is that? The media actually acting like journalists and saying, hey, we want on-the-record conversations. Speaking of Attorney General Eric Holder, House Republicans allege that Holder may have committed perjury when he testified in mid-May. Holder said that he had, quote, nothing to do, didn't have anything to do with the potential prosecution of the press. He didn't have anything to do with it. He was outside the loop on that. And yet Holder allegedly signed off on a search warrant calling a Fox News reporter a criminal co-conspirator. The Fox News reporter was not charged with any crime. It was James Rosen. And House Republicans say, hey, you have to explain this. How is it you have this big of a discrepancy when you testified under oath in front of Congress? The mess just keeps getting messier. 2 more countries are planning not to trade in the U.S. dollar when they trade with China. They are not going to use the U.S. dollar. They're going to use the Chinese currency, the yuan, and vice versa, and that's New Zealand and France. Last I checked, France was a pretty big country. And what this means is that a few more countries now are planning on not using the dollar, which is the world reserve currency. And that is why people are worried that the dollar is losing, and it is losing its world reserve currency status. So more and more countries are trying to not use the dollar in settling trade. They're using yuan and euros and yuan and the New Zealand money and the yuan and rubles and yuan and yen and yuan and rupees. And hey, what happens when the world doesn't need dollars anymore? All these dollars are out there and they come back to America. Well, when you have a lot of something, it's less valuable, which means the dollar's buying power would go down, which means we would have some pretty stiff inflation, if not a hyperinflation. Now, some people say, this is years away, we have time to correct it. Other people say the dollar could lose its world reserve status or have its world reserve status really, really hurt sooner than you think. My only question is, when? It's just a matter of time. Today, the stock market, I got to show you this. Well, the stock market's hitting all these new highs day after day. And here we go. Oh, the bull run gets solid footing. Look, we've created the $12.8 trillion. Look at it's the bull market, solid footing. This is outrageous. This is Thursday's USA Today. Okay? And here they have a huge story about the bull run and how well the economy's doing and how much they think the stock market's going. Not a word in this article, not a single word, about the $85 billion a month, the $1 trillion a year the Fed is printing to prop up the stock market and the economy, and not any word about the prior money printing, QE1, QE2, Operation Twist, and a little talked about a money printing operation, dollar swaps in Europe, propping up European banks and the European economy. Not a word about that. Well, I got to tell you that the most recent data would throw a big bucket of cold water on how well the economy is doing. Unemployment this past week came in much higher than expected. Home sales came in lower than expected. GDP was just revised lower. That another statistical fraud produced by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and our government. The GDP wasn't what they said it was. We revised it lower. The economy's way worse than they said it was. And finally, mortgage rates are up because interest rates on the 10-year Treasury are up. I mean, the 10-year Treasury went from about 1.63457 in the beginning of May, and at the end of May, it's at 2.1819, which doesn't seem like a lot, 1.65 to 2.8. Wow, but you know what? That's a, 15, 20% increase in interest rates? Mortgage rates are going up because they're set off the 10-year Treasury? Now, I'm sure the Federal Reserve will try to tamp that down, and that's the reason why, woohoo, because bad news is good news, and the good news is the Fed's going to keep on printing money. I talked to my friend Gregory Mannarino, who's a trader and an analyst, and he said, and I got to read you this quote. This was blurted out while we were on the phone. I said, I'm going to write this down and quote you. He said, the Fed's go-go juice is going to turn into poison. That's his prediction, and I couldn't agree with him more. Thank you for supporting USA Watchdog by coming here, by your comments, and thank you for your donations both to the P.O. Box and on the website. Really appreciate you supporting USA Watchdog. That's the way I see it. Have a nice weekend.